Hey everyone, this is Carlos, CEO at Product School. I'm here with Spencer Shulem, who's the CEO at BuildBetter. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Always great to have some product CEOs on the show. And I have to admit, your product BuildBetter, even though it's been around for some time, didn't learn about it until recently. So I'm very excited to have you on the show so we can unpack how this product helps product teams.
Yeah, I definitely partially intentional. We spent a lot of time building the product, so we're kind of now coming out of the weeds a little bit. But it's been a long journey. I think we were like one of the first GPT-powered tools in like 2020 to really be building something. So it's been it's been quite a while building on top of a lot of tech for sure.
Was that your MVP, like creating a GPT first?
Yeah, we kind of like in 2020 we had this intuition that the market around product was changing and AI was changing. So the product intuition was product teams were becoming remote. There was more operational work. You can call that the product-led movement, maybe product-led growth. A lot of this was just changing fundamentally. And then on the other side, AI was getting really good. And so we thought there was something happening there where we could say, okay, maybe AI is getting good enough to start solving some of these product problems. So back in 2020, the Da Vinci model, one of OpenAI's more popular first models, this was like GPT-3, so ChatGPT was 3.5. We were like, oh wow, this could start solving some product problems that we were looking at. So we always were kind of AI first, AI focused. At the time, we never really thought of it as like, AI tech. It was just kind of, this is the tools that we need to solve the problem. And then, of course, as time has gone on, we became like the first tool for product teams to use the call data. We became the first AI summaries with GPTs. So we've just kind of been in the background, kind of building these incredible experience, iterating with our customers. But it's always been the same problem, which is like, how do we reduce the operational work product teams have to do?
So it's truly an AI first company.
Yeah. I mean, like OG AI first for sure, which is weird. I mean, it's only been 4 years, but like AI is moving so fast. It's weird for us to be this like old guy in the room being like, hey, we've been here for 4 years. But fundamentally, yeah, every single part of our stack was thought of and built from, how do we use AI to empower product teams and like reduce the operational work.
Yeah, that's a good distinction because that's, I think about the mobile movement and how many large companies try to become mobile first, but they weren't born mobile first. And now we're seeing a new generation of companies or products that are truly AI first.
There's a huge difference and a good distinction there too. I mean, a lot of companies are sprinkling in AI on top of their fundamental technology that they built. And it's just a bastardized version of it. They don't understand the technology. They don't understand the power of the technology. They're just kind of like a GPT wrapper of their own data is kind of how they build AI. And so it's just a different way of thinking. I mean, you can put a website on a phone and say that that's a mobile phone app or something like that. Or you can build something knowing that the finger size is this size and you have so much bandwidth over internet and you're trying to accomplish specific goals. And those tends to be the product that win much better on mobile to extrapolate your analogy. So I think when we think of AI first products, there's that. And then there's the other side, which is so AI that there's no fallback for a customer. There's like nothing for the customer to do other than just ask a question and hopefully get a response. And so I think there's like a middle ground between the kind of that bridge that we talk about, bringing people from an existing experience people are familiar with, and then adding that new AI experience into that blend, versus like picking one or the other, like old experience with a GPT wrapper or just new experience with no way of navigating it from an existing user perspective.
So tell me more about BuildBetter. What are the specific use cases for product teams?
Yeah, so our focus has always been the operational work that product teams have to do. You can call that product ops. It's not, product ops is definitely kind of the job to be done that we really focus on. We're really building the empowerment for the product team. So what that looks like and what that means is we consume almost every data from the product organization. And that starts with the internal data. So that starts with recording your product stand-ups. It's engineering stand-ups, your product scenes, your strategy calls. It's everything inside of your company that's being talked about is getting recorded, either with BuildBetter or another tool, but you're being imported into BuildBetter. And then we look at other data. So it's your user research, it's your sales calls, it's your onboarding calls. And then we also integrate all of your customer success support tickets, your Slack messages, your surveys, your CSVs, whatever it might be. And we process all of that into what we call signals, where it's kind of this proprietary model that we built that kind of goes through this data and turns it into something usable. And then we take that usable data, so that could be identifying blockers at your company, and then we turn those into reports, workflows, qualified answers, documents, whatever you need. So for example, my favorite report I get every single day in the morning at 8 a.m. PST, I get a report that goes through all the calls that happened at the company in the previous day that I have access to. And it tells me if anyone's blocked on anything, what they're blocked on, why they're blocked on that, what issues and problems came up from customers, and what blocks customer success has. And then I can go and proactively kind of get ahead of that. I also, on every Wednesday at 5 p.m., I get a report about every objection that customers are bringing up on sales calls, onboarding calls, and customer success calls. And then I can kind of review that. And that also goes through customer support tickets as well. So we really try to say, what is the outcome, the deliverable that a product team needs and cares about? And then how do we use AI to answer those questions and provide kind of a concrete resource for them?
Well, I have my mind is exploding right now. I have a comment and a question. My comment is, first of all, it's so awesome to hear a CEO finding value from AI, because I've seen people talk about AI, especially CEOs, as something that is very productive for kind of individual contributors. Almost like, let's. But like seeing the real impact of AI on a strategy level, I think it's important, and I'm a believer that AI can make an even bigger impact at the higher levels than just an IC level. But my question to you is the how, right? As you start a business and are trying to become this platform, it's almost impossible to build it all. So very curious around the import or the integration features to help you connect that data that is already living in third-party tools such as Zoom, Salesforce, and others.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for founders to really think about, particularly those building with AI, is like, what is your first party data that you're really is more proprietary to your technology? We are pretty platform agnostic when it comes to call recording and the types of calls that we record. It's usually the first time a product team's ever started to record their internal meetings, or really the organization recording their internal meetings, because there was really no value to it. I mean, you record a call, you put it into a bucket, you never come back to it. What's the point? So when you start adding value to that, now all of a sudden companies are creating this data for the first time, and it's being recorded for the first time because of BuildBetter. And now we're able to kind of navigate and make use of that data inside of an organization. When it comes to other data types, there's not a lot of differentiation that we can have from where we're polling. I mean, there's only so many places that this data lives, but the differentiation then becomes, well, what do we do with the data, and how do we process that data to turn it into something usable? A lot of companies, a lot of ways people approach this is literally kind of the GPT wrapper analogy, which is you just kind of pull in the data, you kind of clean it up a little bit, you ask a GPT question, you use embeddings or like kind of a vector search over it, and you get a qualitative answer that's like okay at best. What we really spent the last 4 years doing is, how do we properly cleanse and clean that data? Cleaning is almost like too basic. I would say really transforming this data into something that an AI model can consume over thousands and thousands and thousands of data points. So like the reports that I can get on a Friday, I can look over, I think right now it's up to 180 days of data to answer a specific question, which is an insane context limit, with citations and specific quotes from team members and customers and stuff like that. So to get that level of fidelity and to get that level of data is really, really kind of different and important. But that comes from cleaning up the data in a specific kind of proprietary way. So to kind of answer your question, yes, I mean, I think we're pulling from a lot of these similar data sources. We have a little bit of first party data from recording internal meetings for the first time. But a lot of what makes BuildBetter is how we process and clean that data so that an AI can start using it in a meaningful way.
The image that came to mind as I hear you describe this is how a lot of companies had to create their own data centers to
Yeah.
gather data from external customers and use their CDP and their data lakes and their ETL to kind of transform the data in ways that they can use internally.
Yeah.
You are mostly sounds like you're mostly working with internal data, right? Like the information that is flowing between your team members and that helping make sense out of it. Because it's true, like in these days where there's so many tools out there, it's a lot of missing pieces in all of them. And I can imagine there's a challenge with ensuring that you truly have access to all those different platforms. So then you can create the right type of insights. Otherwise, you might be missing some important context.
Yeah. I mean, the one analogy that I've always heard from people around AI is it's infinitely patient. And I think one of the things that we forget about infinitely patient is it means that you don't have to rush through something to get to the outcome. And a lot of times when we work with our customers, they would prefer you took 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or a day to get a great response rather than a response in 5 seconds. You ask a question like, what's the top priority? Well, basically, it's like it just starts busting out this quote unquote knowledge. And you're like, well, that's not useful or helpful. And I can't verify and I can't. So I think a lot of the ways in which that a lot of times people, particularly like, founders and AI companies and stuff like that, they're really just trying to get quick answers, quick responses, quick data, quick whatever it might be. And every single AI advertisement that you're going to see and you have seen the last 2 years, all of them are the same. Is like, you have no idea what's being written on the screen, but boy, is it fast. You just get this flood of text on your screen as quickly as possible. So yeah, I mean, these custom workflows, these custom use cases, it really changes kind of what you're trying to accomplish with AI, and it makes it orders of magnitude better and higher quality.
One of the challenges that I have with a lot of these productivity tools is that sometimes they make teams unproductive because there's so many, right? So many people try to replace the spreadsheet and somehow the spreadsheet's still alive and now there are more tools. So, So I can put this, your product kind of in that space, helping product teams be more productive. Like, how do you go about measuring success?
It's a really important question. I think, when we did case studies with our customers, and I think this is just like a general lesson, is you're kind of, with AI, it's such a new space. You don't have a benchmark to kind of go off of. So a lot of tools you might say, okay, well, it's how many sales you have, or how many leads you have, or how many roadmaps you've created, or tickets you've created. There might be some metric of success inside of an organization. But with BuildBetter and with a lot of AI tools, you really don't want to have number of things generated or something like that as like a real metric of success. You kind of want to have something more quantitative, ideally, which is how much more productive or faster or reduction or whatever it might be. Our real focus and what we typically go to our customers for is often a reduction in the operational work the product team has to do. And this can be a little bit more quantitative. So this could be how much time are you spending before and after BuildBetter on going through user research, writing status reports or updates or whatever it might be. But sometimes it can be more qualitative, where it's more of like, our team feels more aligned. Our team feels like we're on the same page. One of the things you mentioned is siloing of data. And one of the ironies of a lot of the tools inside the product space is they charge per seat. And what happens when you charge per seat is, well, what do people optimize for? They optimize for the least amount of seats possible so that you can get the most amount of, value with the least amount of money spent. And that causes, it almost funny enough, data silos. Because now only 3 people have access to the roadmap, 2 people have access to the research, and you're kind of creating this unnecessary communication between teams that is bound to fall apart, bound to not happen. So we've really focused on not just business model, not just innovation from a product lens, from what we're trying to accomplish, but also business model innovation, where we say, how are we pricing and selling this product to these companies so that is part of what you sell? You sell a product that doesn't create data silos. You sell a product that doesn't create confusion between different departments. So that means like unlimited seats. That means charging for usage, overcharging for people inside the organization. And that's part of building kind of tools with product teams, particularly because you really need to focus on what is the job to be done. And a lot of it is like, how do you break down these data silos that a lot of these tools have kind of created?
I love that point. Let's talk about it because I see companies that are now experimenting with including AI and now realizing that the
Right.
old school pricing model of seat-based pricing doesn't always work, and they're trying to go into
Yeah.
this usage-based pricing. The downside that I see with usage-based pricing is that how do you like it can also penalize usage, right? Like some people would say, well, I don't want if I'm going to
Yeah.
be charged kind of like pay per click.
Exactly.
Like I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
limit the
Yeah.
number of clicks. So how do you
Yeah.
go about aligning incentives?
I mean, that's the hardest problem. You're always going to be optimized for, like, your customer's always going to optimize for whatever your pricing is. And there's some kind of psychological hacks that you can do. There are tools, for example, that might constantly remind you of the value that you're getting the more you use it and stuff like that. Slack, in theory, like their trial was you get a 10,000 message in history. And what you're really paying for is like integrations and history of your messages. But you don't feel that when you're paying for it. You don't remember that you're paying for a 10,000 message history. You're kind of paying for everything that kind of comes along with it. So there's, some of these tools have found ways of doing per seat usage-based pricing in some ways, trying to find some type of estimate, trying to give people a bridge towards this new way of thinking. The way we really try to approach it is if a customer looks at us and says, well, I paid X amount of dollars for this specific deliverable. So like, let's say they're recording these calls, they're paying for the calls to be recorded, and we generate a report. If at the end of the week you look at that report and you say, well, that wasn't very useful and I just paid a bunch of money for it, that's now on us. I mean, that's where we failed, and now you're going to use the product a lot less. The thing that's interesting, though, is it creates an incentive for us as a business to add as much possible value as we can to the deliverables, to the outcomes, to the thing that you're paying for, because if we don't, you won't use it. And so the seat-based pricing, what you end up signing up for a tool and they're optimizing for reducing the cost of the use of the tool as much as physically possible, because they're not getting paid if you use it more. They're actually losing money every time you use the product. So they're trying to say, well, we're not going to care about customer support. We're not going to care about onboarding. We just want you to sign the contract and then get out of our way, because that's what they're optimized for as a business. As a customer, you're kind of incentivized, let's use the product as much as possible. We're kind of flipped, where we say our incentive is for you to use the product as much as possible. So that means the product has to be easy to use. It has to be beautiful. It has to be fun. You have to get real value from it. You have to understand what the value is. You have to be able to share it with as many people inside your company as easily as possible. So yes, inherently there is an incentive for a customer to say, well, I'm going to use this as little as possible. But then we have to come back and say, well, this is how much value you lose by not using our product, because we've added so much value. There's so much work to be done inside of it. So I think the incentives are favoring customers now more than ever, which is you only pay if we provide value. It's on us to provide value, but there's always going to be that ebb and flow. I think the incentives for customers have never been better, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think of seat-based pricing as a prepayment, and in the best case scenario, the client will actually use the maximum
Yeah.
that's supposed to use. When in
Yeah.
usage based, you are just paying for the usage, and now it's on the vendor to show the value of that constantly, because now it's easier for someone to stop using. Hence, you are not going to get paid.
100%. I mean, you can sign up for BuildBetter, not use it, we make nothing. So we benefit nothing, even if you have 100 people inside of BuildBetter. So like, we're constantly fighting with the market to say, how do we give you more value? And it means better customer support. It means better, follow through. It means delivering more value. It means iterating. It means shipping new things to existing customers. I mean, if you talk to anyone who's bought an enterprise license, 90% of them say, like, I don't even open up the tool anymore, or it's terrible, it's bad, or support takes a week to respond. Every single day that we don't fix a problem that stopped you from using our product, we lose money. And that's like an insane change when you think about the economics of B2B SaaS today. So I'm really excited for it as a customer, but also as a deliverer of these services.
Let's talk about those specific use cases for the product team and the org design of a product team as a whole, because as you know, there's been a lot of evolution, and now companies are shrinking and including product teams, right? And I think there's a good point to be made. Like, a lot of product teams maybe weren't providing enough value, or now with AI, we're able to provide the same, if not more value, with less people. So I totally get that perspective. and how teams are now leveraging AI. But I want to go even deeper and see what are the specific use cases or examples you see in how the new product teams are being designed.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot more. I mean, we've definitely seen teams where the job of a product manager was never really clearly defined. And so you go to 10 different companies, you have 10 different roles for product management. And that caused a lot of confusion as to, are the product teams getting smaller or are the roles becoming more defined? Because what we've seen is that some product managers were really project managers. Some product managers were product operations people. And so now those roles are now getting defined and we're having more clarity on really what a product manager does. And I think AI is helping define those roles much better inside of a company because we don't have to say, well, you have to be a jack of all trades, you have to be a great project manager, and you have to be a great product operations person and a great user researcher, because we can define these roles a little bit better and AI can kind of take the burden off of you needing to be all these 5 different roles. And now sometimes we just hire a specific person for that role that can use AI to kind of help bridge that gap between that role and product. So I think there are some specific roles that some people have obviously found a lot of value. I think oftentimes the number one thing that gets automated is the operational stuff, which is really why we're focused on it. It's the thing that no one likes doing. It's the things that, people drudge. I remember I had a job as I had a product, and I remember I was talking to the CEO and I was having a call with him, and he's like, Spencer, I need you to write me some more reports. Every day I need to kind of understand what the product team's working on. I'm like, look, man, the amount of time it would take me to write that report is about as much time as I have throughout the day to go do the things I need to do, because I'm on meetings the other half of the day. So I can either write you a status update report or I can do my job. You pick. And he said, I'd rather you write the status update report. And my mind was blown. I was like, I thought that was a soft question. I thought that was an obvious, no, you're not going to say what I think you're going to say. But it really highlighted how desperate these product teams have been to figure out, how do I really accomplish the job that you hired me to do? Because there's so many things inside the product organization that needs to get done. And so much of it is also stakeholder management. And so much of it is communicating and working in strategy with the rest of the organization, the rest of the team. And I just didn't have time to do a lot of that stakeholder management that I needed to do. So I think what we're going to see is incredible product people are just going to have more free time. And then the rest of it is going to be kind of offloaded to some tools and some operations. Now, I know your specific question was specific use cases for, AI and product teams. I think I haven't written a document in 3 years. At all inside of my product team. I don't even think inside of our product org there has been a document that's been written. A lot of that has been automated because I'm talking about that content on a call, and then I just go to BuildBetter and we have this custom document template, and you pick the template that you want, you pick the call, and this could be a recording I've done on my own device. Sometimes I'll just talk to my phone for 15 minutes, upload that to BuildBetter, and then select a document, and we have a whole PRD specific for BuildBetter that we use. And it just generates a document off that. Now, there's a little bit of editing and tooling around for that, but that's a huge part of what product management used to be, which is just writing. And now, as a person who's not a very strong writer, I can talk for 15 minutes and get it to turn that into something usable for the rest of my team. I think that's a very obvious first use case. The second stuff is going through user research. I mean, the amount of time product teams just never actually ever went through user research because of the time commitment. Now, that's a huge change, because now you're going from something that never happened to something that can happen every single day. So, one of the things that we see product teams really change, especially when they use tools like BuildBetter, is now for example, I can filter by, I want to see customers in the last 7 days who had this specific problem at this severity, gave this emotional response, who had talked about these specific problems. And I want to see a clip of that from a customer, and I want no bias. So I don't want any leading questions to getting that response. I want them independently to respond to it. And I want to see support tickets all the way to a user research call, all the way to sales calls. And I want to see that clip right now. And we can provide that to you in seconds rather than hours with a dedicated user research team. So I think those are 2 kind of things that come to mind, is often documentation and sifting through a lot of data really quickly with like really that high crisp fidelity that you're looking for. That was really hard before. And those are like two very obvious things that we've started to see happen a lot more in product teams.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, because I've seen that too. I've seen a lot of PMs trying to get into AI and they default to something like ChatGPT, right? And they use it to generate that PRD template. And that's okay, but ultimately it becomes a commodity because there's not a specific context around it. And I think the data that you can infuse from all these other systems that are happening in your organization is what provides that unique value for that particular user.
Yeah, I mean, context is king in the age of AI. Like, it's so funny too. Like, you'll see these people, they'll build like a little chat tool for writing PRDs or documents or whatever it might be, and you go to it and you feel like there's magic behind it for a second, and then you read it and you're like, this is not useful or helpful in any meaningful way to me or my team. And I think that's kind of one of the problems that a lot of AI has kind of done is there's a lot of snake oil. There's a lot of these tools that it says it's going to automate your part of your job. It says it's going to write you a PRD. It says it's going to do all these things. And you end up using it and it has no idea who your customers are, who your product does, what specific features. It doesn't know the difference between your competitor and your product. It doesn't understand the difference between features that you haven't shipped, features that you have shipped. So when you look at AI, it can only be so smart. I mean, a lot of times people are afraid of AGI. They're like, oh my God, the second AGI turns on, my job's gone. But even if you took Einstein, let's just hypothetically say he was the smartest man alive, and you put him in a room and you say, I need you to write a PRD about this feature, he probably still couldn't do it without all the context about, well, who's my customer? Well, what are we working on? Well, like, it just doesn't matter how smart you are if you don't have the context to write or to think through that problem thoroughly. So I think a lot of these tools, they're trying to beat a dead horse with like intelligence, when it's really not an intelligence game. It's a context game. It's, can you provide whatever system, whatever AI, whatever human with the right context to answer those questions? So, I mean, that's why we spent so much time on kind of like cleansing this data, because if you cannot find the context to answer that question, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your prompting is. It doesn't matter how good your workflows are. If you cannot provide the right context, then you might as well just not do anything.
I want to grab up this conversation with a hot take. This is your hot take. I just want to share it here and make you react. You said something along the lines as, if you are going to fire the first handful of, you are going to have to fire the first handful of product people until you fully understand what type of product person you need.
Yeah. I think this is a very obviously like a lived experience, but I started to notice this problem with a lot of people, particularly leadership. You're depending on your type of organization, let's say you're an engineering led or marketing led or product led or whatever it might be, your first few hires in product are often, I don't really know what product is at this role, but there's a lot of jobs that the CEO is doing around developing and shipping product that we need to hire someone for. And so they don't really know what that means. And so they look for a Steve Jobs. So like, we want a visionary product person that's going to, ignite our product organization. Then they realize Steve Jobs is probably a really bad project manager and their engineering team has no idea what they need to work on for the next week. And all the documentation's out of date. And they're like, oh shit, that's not really, we needed someone for that side of it. And then sometimes they'll hire a project manager and they're like, well, where's your strategy? Where's your vision? Where's your like concepts? Where's your stakeholder management here? And they'll like, oh shit, that wasn't the right person. And so they keep kind of going through this pretty typical ebb and flow of kind of hiring A and then hiring a B and then hiring C. And then usually by their third, either on that third or after their third, they kind of realized what they needed. Maybe it was A all along and they just need to give support to A, or maybe it was B or C, or maybe they realized it's not A, not B, not C. They don't need a product person. They need a project manager and they don't want to hire anyone in that role for the next year. So it was kind of this weird realization, because I thought I was like, oh, I get a role and I'd be sometimes the first product person at this company. And then I'd be let go a few months later. I'm like, what happened? And then it would happen again. I'm like, what is going on? Am I this bad at product? I don't think I'm this bad at product. And I'd start going into these meetings. I'm like, this is exactly what you're going to hire me to do. I'm going to do these 5 things. Is that what you want? that's exactly what we want. And I go in, and then we'd have the same conversation. Do you want me to write a report, or do you want me to do the job you hired me to do? And it'd be the same thing again and again. And then I started interviewing leadership and product and all this kind of stuff. And it was the same story. I mean, like, everyone's kind of ashamed of it in some way, but so many of the product people, particularly leadership that I would talk to, they went through 2 or 3 or 4 fires before they kind of found a job that was at the right company in the right role in the right position that they had. It was really weird. And I'm giving you my best guess as to why I think it happens, but it seems so consistently contrary to almost every other leadership role, even non-leadership product roles. You go through like 2 or 3 a minimum before you really find the right product person for your company.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think part of it is that this function is relatively new. Like, I don't know of any other C-level position other than chief product officer that was created in the 21st century. And it got so hot, right? And I lived this story through my company. Everybody wanted to become a product manager to a fault, right? And companies were calling everybody a product whatever. And there was so much confusion in the market. All of these people running around doing meeting for the meeting. I totally resonate with the problem that you are solving. And then at some point, when shit hit the fan, and like, it's time to show real value for the shareholders, like, well, what's going on here? Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a correction that is specifically affecting product function, just because there wasn't enough definition around it, or not. It's been not too long,
I mean, 100%. And I think, that's when we think about product teams shrinking, sometimes that's exactly what we're talking about. We're thinking about really just these jobs being well defined for the first time, and people really understanding what they're hiring. I mean, as nice as it is to be hired as a product person, it's really much nicer when you're hired as a product person in a company that understands what a product person is and understands what that does. And you don't feel like you're constantly being judged by your ability, to climb a pole as a fish. And so it's interesting, and I'm optimistic that I think product is only going to become more important as engineering is probably going to be one of the first things that AI really starts solving and really helps more than anything. But the strategy, the long-term vision, the things that are incredibly high in context knowledge, those are really, really hard to automate. So I think, again, like, what we're just going to see is more automation on the operation, low context, low window kind of stuff. And product people, I think, are just going to be this natural role where I think people are going to start companies as a product person. And I think we're going to see more of that. We're just going to see more product founders, and they're going to have small teams because the AI can help with a lot of the engineering, a lot of the design, a lot of this other stuff. But the real hard thing is going to be this product knowledge, this product understanding, the intuitive understanding of the market, the user research, like this kind of navigating that AI is really, really going to struggle and challenge with as it continues to be. So it's really going to be interesting to see how product changes over the next few years. But I think it's a much brighter future than a lot of people think.
100%. Plus, we're also being part of that change. And I think that's the exciting piece, right? That is not just observing it, is now being an active contributor through the technology that you are building, through the training that we are providing, and just in general, having an ecosystem and more maturity in it. So love it. And I hopefully we can have you back, in a few years. And we're in the third wave of product. And now we're talking about how AI automating way more than we could even imagine.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to be interesting listening back to this and being like, boy, was I an idiot, or boy, was that well said. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I'm excited to listen back to it.
Spencer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.